Tina koutou katoa, ko rei te rest toku inga, koro mātua o whakatū. Nā mai haere mai and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Nelson City Council on Thursday the 22nd of October 2020, and I invite you all to stand and together we'll say our karakia today, which is tuia. Tuia ke rongo, tuia ke rango, tuia ke roto, tuia ke waho, tuia te hera tata, ko rongo te po, ke rongo te ao, huye, tai kie. Kia ora, thank you, welcome.
Excuse me, having been denied the opportunity.
Ms. McCall, if you haven't. Beautiful waiata. We'll get underway today. I haven't had anyone confirm for public forum, but we'll start at the beginning of the agenda. So no apologies today. Everybody is here. The confirmation of order of business is as set out on the run sheet. If you have any interest to declare, just encourage you to keep your interest register up to date. Any interest for today's meeting, I'm not aware of any, so I think we're all good to go. So there's been nobody called for public forum. We'll move on to item 5, which is the Mayor's report. This is a reasonably brief report. I'm going to move the recommendations at the start and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. You're happy to second, Councillor Edgar. I'm going to move those now so that we know what it is that we're working towards today. But I will just introduce the report. This is an opportunity for us as a council to first focus on the journey ahead for Aotearoa. And I want to acknowledge the weekend that's just gone. It's been a resounding win for the Prime Minister and the Labour Party. And they certainly have returned with a mandate, an important mandate, a mandate that actually aligns very closely with the priorities of this council. One of the areas that is of real concern to us in this region and to the government is housing, the affordability of housing, housing choice, and really making sure that we look after homes and create homes for people, all people in our community. At the start of this triennium, we focused on the importance of housing and we made it one of our triennium priorities. We started with a structure that was very traditional and that was a good thing because it gave all of you the opportunity to experience what council's about and to have a council with 6 new members coming back. That was important. Some of you for your first time in local government. So we've put together a structure, but through the process of looking at our priorities, the increased pressure on our community in relation to housing, the importance of making sure that you spend time, as much time as you can, engaging with your community and looking at what next year's calendar was going to be like in terms of the hours with our traditional structure, having us in this room. It was time for us to make some changes, and I think a really positive change is put in this proposal today, and I'm really hoping that you're able to support it. One thing that I did as I went through, and I'll take questions, so I'll take a list of questions, I'm noting those. And one thing that I did do is when I talked through with all of you about the proposal today, I focused on the reasons for why I felt this was important. And they're set out in the paper that we've got today. I think it is critically important that we respond to the current situation in New Zealand. COVID-19 has had a significant impact on everyone in our country. And I think we're going to have to learn to live with COVID, unfortunately. And I think those signals are now coming quite clearly from our health professionals. But COVID is one of the elements that we work with. The other is actually trying to create the city that we want to live in, the city that is a city that looks after our people, that attracts talent, that looks at innovation and job creation and does the best that we can with the assets that we're responsible for. And this structure is set up to deliver that outcome. The easiest thing for me to do as mayor is to make no change. The easiest thing is to make no change, but would that be the right thing? I don't believe it would be the right thing for our community. And right now, I've delivered in many of our conversations, I've talked about the importance of responding to the environment around us and to the needs of our people, of working differently, of working closely in engagement and developing with our community rather than delivering to our community. And this structure is designed to bring forward that approach. This is a time when we can shy away from challenge and opportunity, or we can embrace it. And it's a time that we did that, and it's a time for the courage that we need to do things differently. So that paper comes to you in that regard. I think the paper is very clear in what it's going to do. My intention today is that while it's been moved and seconded as one, we'll take the structure elements of the proposal first, and then we'll move on to the appointment of the role. So we'll do it in 2 stages because I need to have the structure established, and then we move to the next section. So I'm happy to take any questions from councils and council members. And first I have Councillor Sensen. Councillor Sensen, welcome.
Thank you, Maurice. I've just got a couple of questions under 2 different topics. My first one is, have you ever undertaken such a dramatic restructure like this before?
I have undertaken quite a bit of change when I first became mayor, and I do from time to time make changes and establish new entities. But one of the things that I've found is it actually takes time to learn the craft of council and to work through how we can best use resources, and circumstances in this instance require something different. And I think most people in our community understand that. So I think it is important to make some real difference here.
And have you ever been restructured in this way?
No, I haven't. It's not a personal, and I say it's not a personal, I don't take structure and setting up structure as a personal issue, but no, I've been through periods of council where there have been changes in roles, changes in structure, but I think this is really bold and fit for the times.
Okay, so Mayor Miccio's restructure in 2010, which effectively sidelined the most popular councillor, which was, I believe, yourself. And there's some wonderful quotes in the newspaper about your feelings about it that didn't seem to be the same as this.
Councillor, I'm really wanting to focus on the issues, not the personalities.
Sure, okay.
Today. But Councillor, I will answer you. So the council of the day made that decision. And not me, Micio, the council of the day, and that was a council decision. And yes, it is disappointing when sometimes when you feel that your roles move around. But I would challenge the comment to go most popular, because one of the things that I do know is that after an election, and I've said this to all of you, your position on where you came in the election is irrelevant. Actually, it's irrelevant. You all sit here equally, including me, with 1 vote. I think because the outcome of elections depends on a range of factors. Deputy Mayor, for instance, spent most of the election period in hospital. So I think circumstances, finances, all sorts of things dictate outcomes. But when you come together as a council, and I've made that really clear at the start of the triennium, you come together and there isn't a pecking order. You all come in here, you're all talented, capable people.
So it brings me to my question, really, which was about the process. And I guess having established that you have been through this very same
No, Councillor, I have not been through this very same process. No, sure. Quite a different process, in fact. Okay. I wasn't aware that Mayor Micio and the councillors were restructuring. There was no engagement with me at all about that. I certainly didn't have the benefit of sitting down with the Mayor.
Can I just finish my question?
Well, I'm answering your question, and I don't want you misstating
my question. Can I ask my question?
Yes, you can, but please don't misstate what I've said.
Sure. So my question is, I guess, about the process and why it wasn't considered appropriate to bring all elected members together in the first instance and have a group discussion looking at what the challenges were and discussing openly as a group of elected members what the possible solutions might be. I think, that for me, that is just a critical piece that was missing in this process. And so I would like to understand why you didn't think that that was a good place to start with, an open and frank discussion amongst all elected members about the challenges and a way forward.
Councillor, I have talked through this with you all when we came together.
My question is as a first step.
Yes, I hear you, and I'll certainly talk through that, and I have already with the elected members. From my position in Mayor, it's really important that we have individual conversations, because what I've found is for some of you, your voices, you find it actually, to get your voice heard sometimes can be a little bit more challenging than for others. Some people in this room are really strong orators, and others need the time to work through and ask questions and understand. And so for me, the respectful thing to do was to meet with you individually. And I did ask all of you to respect that process and to wait until I'd completed talking with people individually so that they could hear directly from me about the proposal. And I think that was the right way to do things. Then I wanted to come together because as we worked through, I wanted to hear from you about your thoughts, where you thought things should be, your questions, your individual questions. And for me, that was a really rewarding process. And I think for the councillors sitting around the table, it was a really rewarding process too. And several have come back to me to say, thank you for doing that. Any further questions?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions. So I'm just looking at the structure and there is no reference at all to one of the decision-making bodies, which is the Forestry Advisory Group. And so I'm just wondering why, did you consider rationalising the Forestry Advisory Group into another committee or subcommittee?
The structure at the moment includes the governing committees and the subcommittees of council, not all of them. So there are a range of groups, and the Forestry Advisory Group is still sitting as part of the structure. I think it delivers an important role, but there's a range of the iwi Partnership Group isn't there because they're going to come together as part of the delegations. So the iwi Partnership Group, the Chief Executive Employment Committee, all of our joint committees with Tasman and the Forestry Advisory Group as well.
So I guess the Forestry Advisory Group is the one decision-making group that is not at all referenced in this report. And I guess...
No, I'm sorry, Councillor, there are a range of decision-making groups that are not here at the moment.
Well, the ones that are stand alone from Tasman District Council.
No, there's quite a few others. As I just said, we've got the Chief Executive Employment Committee, the iwi Partnership Group. I've got to think about them all. The Regional Transport Committee.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, would you have any appetite, Maurice, for considering rolling the Forestry Advisory Group into the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee? Because I feel that it would benefit from broader elected member and public scrutiny of the decisions, and there is significant risk in financial risk, possibly climate risk in the future, environmental risk. I just wondered whether that would be something you would consider for this today.
Councillor, I wouldn't consider doing that today because it's part of the next suite of delegations, but I'm happy to have that conversation and we can pursue that. That'll come back with the next round with the delegations.
Thanks. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Laurie and then Councillor O'Neill-Stevens.
Thank you, Mary.
Sorry, Councillor Noonan.
I've got a few questions. My first one is, yes, it is a challenging time, but how are we putting our best foot forward when two of our most talented, visionary, hardworking and committed councillors are being put in positions where they'll have very little influence on the rest of the term? And I'm talking about Councillor Rainey and Councillor Sanson.
Yeah. Thanks.
How are we putting our best foot forward?
Councillor, the start of, when I started introducing this report, I talked about a group of very talented and capable people. And I don't look at you and go, one is more capable or more intelligent or more hardworking. You're all good people. And I think to frame a question like that reflects perhaps your perception of your colleagues rather than my perception of my council. And I'm sorry, I can't respond to that because that's your perception of your colleagues, since you see some as more intelligent or more hardworking than others. I don't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of people's perspective. My next question goes like this. You've said, Mayor Rees, that this isn't political. And yet the three councillors that I believe, that many people believe, you have the biggest political problems with are being sidelined for the rest of the term. Do you expect the people of Nelson to believe that that is just a coincidence?
I can't comment on what you believe and what you're bringing through. And what I've said to you is when I come and sit down with everybody and look at the structure and put the structure together, I believe the structure is the best thing to deliver our priorities and to be responsive to our community. The next part of the agenda is the appointment of the roles. And that's up to all of you to vote on those roles. When I put forward the proposal, I reflect the feedback that I've had from elected members about what the roles that they would like to be in and how they would like to put the council together. But then it's up to you to decide who sits in those roles.
Well, with respect, Mary, I think that all the conversations and horse trading that's gone on between the announcement of a change and where we are today.
Point of order.
Has sealed
Point of order called by Councillor Skinner.
Accusing of horse trading. I mean, the comments before were hard to swallow. Someone talking about themselves as being quite superior to everyone else, or a couple of others quite superior. This is a.
I'm sorry, you need to be.
This is a.
What is your point
team
of order?
A point of order on horse trading, accusing us of horse trading.
No, I was accusing the mayor of horse trading.
Well, it's disrespectful to the mayor.
And then,
one needs to look in the mirror very clearly.
look, I'm actually going to uphold Councillor Skinner's point of order, and I'm going to do that because actually one of the things I'm looking for here, and one of the bits of feedback I've heard from all of you, is that's the kind of language that actually isn't appropriate for politics these days.
Okay, so just point of clarity, my first question was actually in reference, Councillor Skinner, to the talents of Councillor Sanson and Councillor Rainey, not myself. My last question is, for now anyway, is one of the things that I'm concerned about the makeup of the new structure and the way roles have been assigned or are going to be assigned. It suggests to me a shift from the progressive direction that this council felt like it was going in after the election, which I believe is the direction the people of Nelson voted for. So when I look at the agenda at 3.3, it talks about our priorities for council. And it talks about one of them being sustainable transport. Now, from my memory, the priority was actually modal shift. For me, there's quite a big difference between modal shift and sustainable transport. Because modal shift is about shifting people out of their cars, out of being in their cars by themselves at the same time as everyone else. So I see this, I wonder if you could comment about how we've gone from modal shift to sustainable transport.
I'm going to have to defer to the officers, Councillor Laurie, who assisted with putting this report together, and I think they've drawn these from the annual plan. So I'm going to go and ask Ms McDonald actually if she can assist me with that. Thank you. We'll come back to you on that. I think that's where the words come from, which will be an annual plan that we consulted on with the community. So we'll come back to you. Councillor O'Neill Stevens.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Mayor. Could you just outline the sort of process you undertook to come to these specific committees as the solution?
I can. I have been signalling now to you probably for the last at least 2, maybe 3 months that we were going to need to do things differently. And on many occasions, both in workshops, Audit Risk Committee would be one where I talked about the importance of bringing, and actually with the advice of the chair of that committee, that health and safety and risk needed to come more closely to council. He was concerned around that. So what I've done is also discussed with the chief executive, the pressures on the organisation, how we could undertake our work more effectively and efficiently from a staff perspective, and that's highlighted in the list at 4.1.3, efficiency for officers. So that's important because we're part of a system. We have a DD Love group manager leaving us and a new group manager coming in. And one of the things that was important for helping with that process was actually making the load a bit easier for a new group manager so they weren't running 2 cycles of committees. So while I was actually very keen, and you know that I promoted the splitting off of the Sports and Recreation Committee, the Community Services Committee 2 terms ago, that was to build and strengthen the relationships, and that was important, and that's been effective. If I look at the relationship that we have, just one example with the mountain biking club now to what it was like 6 years ago, it is just vastly different. I think that good work has been effective, and I'm comfortable now bringing those 2 together to assist with the efficiency of the organisation. I also reflect, as I said, on time of the calendar, of making sure that we pick up some of the gains that we had through the COVID-19 lockdown and the strength of collaboration that we have with the community. I now sit on several leadership groups, one the Interim Regional Skills Leadership Group, to really focus on jobs, careers, training for this region, and I sit as a member of the steering group of the Te Taihu Intergenerational Strategy, and I sit as a member of the leadership group for Project Kokiri. And all of the messages coming to me in that process is that it's working with others that actually is going to be the most important thing to help our community recover and regenerate. And so this structure is designed to really amplify and allow that degree of participative democracy and engagement. So the range of things I also looked at. So it's not a short answer. Sorry, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens, because it's a big thing. It's a big thing to set up a structure, and one that I am, really personally invested in on behalf of the people of Nelson. I'm reflecting the feedback that I've had from the community and other community leaders in bringing this forward. Housing is an issue that is of critical importance, and I've had several meetings with community leaders saying, we want you to do more on housing. We want you to lead on housing. And that's, if you look at the Urban Development Committee, that's what that is saying, housing, housing, housing. And I'm expecting, hopefully, for our process with the community regarding our community housing divestment, I'm hoping that it's going to conclude successfully and not too far away. And this then allows that committee to start work on that housing reserve as quickly as possible, because the need is only growing. So there's a range of matters in terms of how I look at this. I also reflect on the feedback that I've had from elected members on what's working, what's not working. And if I look at the Strategic Development and Properties Committee, many of you are incredibly frustrated that we just cannot get the momentum going on the Haven Precinct, the marina, campgrounds, and that needs some dedicated focus. And Chief Executive has looked at that and said, yes, he will need to resource that committee. That's a very clear signal from the council about our priorities, and that's a reflection of what you have been telling me. A range of other matters, but it's not a singular matter, and nothing in local government is ever singular.
Yeah, maybe just to dig down just briefly, slightly more. So did you consider alternative committee structures first? I'm just trying to get a sense of how many iterations did we go through before we reached this as being the best solution?
Oh, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens, I couldn't give you an exact number.
Like not just more than one.
Yes.
You went through a number of iterations.
Oh, yes, I did. No, I did. I considered, let's first start with do I think the status quo is the best that we could do? And the answer to that was no. And then I start to look at where I go from there, and there's lots of things to move through. I do just want to say, and thank you for that question, that if you go to section 5 and you look at the structure, and I had a really good conversation last night with Councillor McGurk, I've given a flavour of where the delegations will be, but there is still that paper to come. And so as you go through reading about each committee, one of the aspects that is not amplified nearly well enough in the environment and climate, and that should say climate committee, That's all right, not changed Environment and Climate Committee. So correction on page 10 in that table. I missed that. That one of the things that isn't amplified enough is the importance of the regulatory functions of council that sit within that committee.
And then so what engagement with affected staff have you had? I'm thinking people like Roger, Alan and Lisa, our leaders in community services and sport and rec.
I engaged with the chief executive, and the chief executive, I believe, has discussed this with the senior leadership team, and I don't know whether the chief executive wishes to comment in terms of what we've got here. If the chief executive had a concern about this, I think I'd know about it.
Look, it's not my place to comment on who's being appointed to roles, but the workload, if I look at the main drivers of our work sitting immediately below the council, there's the 5 standing committees, and audit and risk are the big drivers. And also the fact that I have one group manager who has to support 2 standing committees is a killer. I mean, that's a lot of his working month or on that 6-weekly cycle spent developing those reports and sitting in the council chamber. So I moved from effectively 5 standing committees plus audit and risk to 3 standing committees, 2 subcommittees plus audit, risk and finance. From a staff point of view is a good move. It also, as I've discussed with the mayor, sends a clear message that I need more resources. And I am basing my comments on the assumption that at least for the first few months, those 2 subcommittees will have a mixture of workshops and formal meetings, that not every one of those meetings will be a formal agenda. And I have discussed that with the SLT, and yes, from a structure point of view, from a workload point of view, supportive, but no comment on the appointments to positions.
Okay, and then just a couple of final ones, if you'll indulge me. I note that it's mentioned that one of the reasons will be reduced meeting time. I know I've asked this in a workshop before, but I'm still not entirely clear where the reduction in elected member meeting time will come from.
That's a 2-stage process. So it's getting the structure right and the timetable and the calendar right for next year. So it certainly frees up some Thursdays, but it also comes with a next step, which is around making sure that when we're in the council chamber, our focus is very much on our governance role. And it's not working our way through a lot of operational matters, and you'll see some further changes coming in relation to that real focus on governance and for the way the chairs are running the meetings.
So that's more the chairing itself as opposed to structure then?
No, it's actually the participation of council, because everyone is part of a meeting, but it's also around the priority setting within the program. But as an example, one of the changes that we have is in the Environment and Climate Committee, and that committee previously didn't have a monitoring function around climate change, and the delegations are proposing that it does. And so that'll allow matters related to climate, to what we're doing around climate change in every area, to be reported regularly to the Environment Committee. And I think that'll be more efficient and actually more robust than individual conversations on every little project as we go through council. It gets us back to that strategic level.
And then just finally, how did you select the proposed chairs?
I listened to the feedback from the elected members. It is inevitable that there are going to be fewer chairs of governing committees because there are fewer governing committees. And I listen to the feedback, and I think about the relationships that sit in there, the skills, the knowledge, and certainly in the case of the urban development subcommittee, there is a lot of talent sitting around this table in relation to that. It is a much broader committee than the City Centre Working Group. It is now got a much bigger range of functions than that one did. It's actually, what it is actually picking up that model but amplifying it, particularly around housing. And I'm confident that the Deputy Mayor has knowledge and skills that are very sound in relation to housing, knowing what's on her CV.
So skills based, but then also relationships as well.
Skills and relationships within council. So I will listen to how I'll watch what's been going on in committees and just watching, sort of thinking about that. But really, inevitably, you're a ranger. As I said at the start, I've got 12 talented people sitting at this table. If you're not a chair, that doesn't mean you don't participate in council. You all still have a vote. You always have the right to attend every committee if you want to. You can, and mostly, this is a council that doesn't clip speaking rights. I've only on one occasion seen speaking rights removed from a member of this council in my entire time on council. Those be denied. So I'm really hoping, and I think all of you know that that's something I feel very, very strongly about, that you have, all members of committees have the right to speak. And if you come and visit a committee, most chairs are very, very good currently, if you're not a member of a committee, of allowing you to speak and participate. Thank you. Councillor Noonan. Oh, actually, I've just got a little answer to a question. First answer to the question is in relation to the report at, sorry, Jay. In relation to the wording in the report that Councillor Laurie asked about, that is taken from the, yes, it is taken from the annual plan, training and focus 2020-2021. It's confirmed. So the officers put the words. Councillor Noonan is next in the speaking order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Neil Stevens, because he actually, the question I wanted to know was, because you have, this is a mayor's report and not a staff report, I wanted to know what the view of the Chief Executive was and the impact of how that, the structure may impact on the staff. So thank you, Councillor O'Neill Stevens.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Sri, probably the question is, the recommendations, if they were to fail today, you've still got reserve, you've still got the powers under Section 41 of the A of the Local Government Act. Would you be, if this was to fail for whatever reason, would you be using those powers under Section 41A of the Local Government Act to establish those committees and the structure?
Councillor McGurk, I've never used the powers. And I'm not inclined to use them because actually I feel it's important that these decisions are, at the end of the day, it'll be a decision of council. And my preference is always that it'll be a decision of council. I can have a view around that, but if the will of this council is for something different, then me imposing that isn't the right thing to do. So no, it's not something I haven't used them and I wouldn't use them. Any other questions? All right, no further questions. In that case, it has been moved and seconded, and now I'll open for debate. And I'll just get my speaking order sorted out. So Councillor Sanson is first. Now what I'm going to do, so just in terms of the moving and the seconding, we're going to do this in two parts. So the first section, we're going to go from, I just make that very clear, firstly we'll receive the report and then we'll go through to, and I just want to make sure I've got the right cut-off point. EJ, where are we stopping? 12. Through to 12, so including 12, and then the next section we'll do, and I think the rest of it we can do, although there's a couple of little, the standing orders matter and the emergency committee matter, I'll just take those in the second block. So block 1 is from clause 1 through to clause 12 inclusive. Councillor Sanson.
So just before we begin are we going to be voting twice?
You will be.
So will there be questions twice and debate twice, or just
I think
once?
we've finished the questions now, so we can do all of the questions.
So there'll just be debate once or twice?
They'll go through and there'll be debate twice.
Okay.
But the questions are completed.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I would, if with your understanding, I would just like to reference some notes.
It's fine.
Thanks. So I live and work by principles of integrity and fairness. Since being elected to Nelson City Council, I have realised how much I also value openness and transparency. I would absolutely support reviewing governance structures to improve outcomes, but this This to me seems to be a disingenuous and flawed process, and I think that the community should be concerned that 3 hardworking and effective councillors are being completely sidelined. I have lived and worked all over the world, founded and run successful companies, am a chartered member of the Institute of Directors, have diverse experience, and yet here I am shocked at the gatekeeping of information and the shutting down of robust questioning. We're living in dynamic and challenging times in an increasingly polarised world. This flawed process, pitching councillors against each other, should not define us. I believe that we, elected members of our community, can listen and we can debate and not lose sight of each other's perspectives. We're all in this together, and we must stay focused on making decisions in the best interest of our community and bringing people along with us. Thanks.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Neil-Stevens and Councillor Rainey.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Mayor. For me to support these changes, I need to be convinced of a number of things. That it's more efficient, that we'll be saving time by making these changes, but that it'll also make us more effective and that we'll be able to drive change. I need to be convinced that this is the best structure that we could have gained. And with the process that's been followed, I can't be assured of any of those things. I personally haven't had the opportunity to speak to Pat or Roger or any of the staff members who are on the ground and know what these changes will look like and what it will mean for them. I haven't been assured that we've looked at every operating model that is elsewhere in the country. I haven't been assured that the process we've followed will bring us together as a team, which is ultimately what we need if we want to deliver for the people of Nelson. I am absolutely not opposed to changing the committee structures because I do believe that we could find efficiencies. What I am opposed to is pushing forward and rushing through something that might not deliver and could possibly in fact set us back. We have built considerable momentum over the past year, and it's been heartening to see on many issues being lifted up and activated. And it's not as many as perhaps it could or should be, but making a change like this does risk that momentum. And I think that if we're going to do it, we should do it right. And therefore, I can't support this. I think that we should vote this down, get together as a team, discuss what the issues are, discuss with staff what the issues are as a team, and brainstorm as a team how we can get the best possible outcome without putting at risk the work we've already done. Thank you.
Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and with your leave, I also will refer to some notes.
It's absolutely fine.
I also don't support the moves outlined today. In my mind, a reshuffle is not progress, especially when I feel there's no reason for change. That is with the exception of the creation of a reformed Community Services Committee, or the melding together of Community Services and Sport and Rec. And as you well know, I was chair of Community Services, you made reference to it earlier, when there was an attempt to split off Sport and Rec 2 terms ago. And there weren't the numbers to get that across the line then. There were, however, last term. And now it seems that the experiment, if you will, has reached its conclusion, and the full committee is to be reformed. And I welcome that. I welcome that. I welcome that move, and I encourage the new chair and deputies of that committee, if the resolution that sets that out is successful, I encourage the chair and the new deputies to embrace all the sectors of our community that fall under their guidance and the committee's consideration, and indeed council's full consideration. As an advocate, you will know I'm an advocate for the arts and community sector, and they perhaps are near the top of the list of those sectors most affected by the pandemic. So you can rest assured that I will stand alongside you, that's the new chair and deputies, and support you to continue to display empathy and understanding at all times in regards to those sectors, as I know you will. I don't think democracy is being served as well as it could be by the changes that are potentially coming today. We should reflect on whether these changes will make any difference in our efforts to achieve progress with those shared goals we formulated at the beginning of the trimester and the new challenges brought on by the pandemic. I really feel that a redrawn and refreshed emphasis on collegiality, as set out by my colleague Rohan, may well have let the existing structure flourish and add even more value to what we're trying to achieve. There's no question in my mind that local democracy needs alternative narratives to remain relevant and valid. And some may say that those alternative voices expressed by councillors with acknowledged empathy and real understanding of their roles and the challenges the city faces are being punished by being removed. And the process culminating in their replacement, to me, sends a clear message that embraces austerity and conservatism. And I believe that those are attributes that have absolutely no place in a post-COVID recovery. I was really, once again, drawn to some words by Professor Anne Salmond, who commented on the election last weekend. And when she said, New Zealanders chose amity over acrimony, generosity over self-serving, and reality over self-deception. And I think we should all heed those words very carefully. Thank you.
Councillor, thank you, Councillor Laurie, then Councillor Fulton, and then Councillor McGurk.
Thank you, Mary. So I too will refer to some scribbled notes. So I've thought about this a lot, and frankly, I think it's ridiculous to pretend that the sidelining of Councillor Sanson, Rainey and myself is not political. I think the public sees right through it. And I think to use COVID as the excuse is pretty tragic. Not only do I think it's pretty tragic, I actually think it's disrespectful to all the Nelsonians who made sacrifices through lockdown and through the COVID recovery. This structure was delivered from on high, and it has not been, there's been nothing really collaborative about it. If we've learnt anything from our response to COVID, it's the need for us to collaborate and work together, not for leaders to take steps designed to divide and conquer. So I am voting against the structure. I will, however, abstain from voting in the next part because I don't want to vote against my fellow councillors who have been put in this position.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, through the Mayor. I'm going to probably speak quite slowly. I'm a little bit nervous and I'm actually a little bit upset. I feel really concerned by the public members in the gallery today with the heckling and the disrespect. And I've sat on this council for 10 years now. Personally, I've experienced a lot of bullying. I've been a hard-working councillor, but I've not been a sensationalist. I've worked incredibly hard behind the scenes to get on with the staff, to get on with my colleagues, to work collegially and to show respect at all time to my fellow councillors. I haven't always received that back, and I haven't always received that back from councillors on the left as well as on the right. Moving into this new term, I was incredibly excited to be working amidst a team of women and a team of forward-thinking men. I was hugely excited about that, and I see you all as very talented people around the table. I am going to refer to the culture in this council because it's been raised by our other councillors, and I watched The Social Dilemma a couple of weeks ago. I've always been aware of how Facebook spreads half-truths and people get on the bandwagon and they know a little bit of the story. And in fact, I'll give you a personal story of my experience. When I went to India, it was my first trip overseas in 10 years, and I went to India to do a 1-month yoga teacher training course, and was sidelined by many of the councillors at the table and had front page articles saying I'd gone AWOL, that I was rorting the system, that I was in fact in India for 3 months, and then during the last campaign, people thought I'd been in India for 9 months. So you know, the fabrication and the way stories are told in our community, there is often some basis, but it is not the full truth. And for me personally, in this term of council, I've not experienced any bullying and I've not witnessed any bullying. And I think that we have been a very collaborative, open-minded and supportive council. I also believe that the staff have bent over backwards to answer questions and to support all new councillors in their roles. I have never in my time on council had as much one-on-one time as we've had in this trimester, and have never had my emails answered like they are being answered now. So I really want to take my hat off to the staff for the hard work that they've put into supporting a new council and to supporting some progressive thinking. At the same time, I think that whilst we all have the right to ask questions and to give our points of view, we all need to practice listening more and listening to the answers that are given. And I often feel a sense of frustration when I hear answers and then the answers again and then the answers again. And as a team, this is a large institution. It has many cogs in the wheels. Things move very slowly. It takes a long time to progress change. And I know the community wants us to do more and do it faster, but having been a part of this organisation, we have to accept that our staff are doing the best they can to deliver, and we want them to stay. We don't want them to leave. We want them to stay so that they feel valued and that they can deliver the change. So I really think that at the moment we have this incredible opportunity to work as a team and to work with our staff. COVID has happened, and that has had a massive impact on councillors and on staff. Moving to online Zoom meetings is not something I ever want to do again. If we all thought we could move to a virtual world, I don't want to be online for any more time that I have to be. You realise that you miss out on the little bits of information during the morning tea, and you miss out on the warmth and smiles of your colleagues and your staff. So COVID has had a massive impact on our organisation, and also our workloads have been much higher. When I think, and I'm going to give some background, and I hope I don't use up my 5 minutes, it'd be unusual for me to. In my first term of council, we had 4 committees, and they were committees of a whole, and our workload was fairly high, but it was manageable. And in my next two terms of council, when the Mayor Rachel became the mayor, we went to committees of 5, but councils only sat on 2 to 3 committees, so your workload was actually significantly less. This term, and I really pushed for committees of a whole, but I pushed for committees of a whole in only 4 committees. And so when Rachel said that we were going to have committees of a whole and 5 committees, I sort of thought, oh, okay, I got half of what I wanted, but not the other half. And that is going to be a massive workload for us all. I didn't support the 5 committees, the changing of the structure of community services into 2. But I would like to acknowledge that Councillor Skinner has formulated really, really strong relationships with the sports community as a result of that change. And I think that committee has been outstanding in its contribution and in that relationship developing. Because that time has been given to sports, we don't have the sporting communities coming in with their grievances as much as we used to, and I really want to take my hat off to Councillor Skinner for having achieved that. I think that allows us to put that slightly behind in terms of our priorities, and you will all know my frustration over the fact that things like campgrounds, which are costing us $350,000 a year, have not been promulgated there, and as has the Haven. There are lots and lots of priority areas which didn't fit our current committee model. Personally, whether you come together as a team first and have a brainstorming session or whether you meet one-on-one with the mayor, I think that's the mayor's individual choice. And I've never ever had an experience different to this one. Aldo met with us one-on-one, apart from with the mayor when he did his reshuffle, apart from with Rachel when he did his reshuffle. And it's disappointing that he didn't give Rachel that opportunity to have that one-on-one meeting when he did his reshuffle. And I was taken aback at the time of that meeting to discover, to come into the chamber, that she had had no chance to have input into that. So for me, my one-on-one time was to discuss my committee and to discuss that over the past year. I've been working incredibly hard in the background, trying to get climate change onto the agenda more and feeling frustrated that that wasn't happening. And the mayor listened, and I feel like we found some really good solutions for that, working with the chief executive as well. So I'm really excited about those changes. And I think the new title, Environment and Climate Committee, reflects what my intentions were when I said, yes, I'm interested in that role. So I'm going to support this. I think that moving to a system of 3 committees where we all sit on those 3 committees gives us all voting rights on those really important things. Moving to 2 subcommittees which we can workshop. You can still come to the workshops if you want, if you're still learning. It's really important that we actually empower some of our councillors to get on and do the work. And I think that that also frees up some of our time to do other things and to work in the background on other stuff. I just want to finish. I've got some notes down here. I just want to finish by saying I really hope that the community thinks about social media, and I would also encourage the media in the room to maybe reach out and interview other people, because some councillors go to the media and others of us are working really hard in the background trying to deliver, and we're not, everyone has their own style. Yeah, I know what I wanted to finish with. I remember in my first term being incredibly nervous talking to the media, and Gail Collingwood and Ali Boswick at the time said, it's not your job to talk to the media, Kate, it's your job to come into council, learn about the system of council and make decisions here. So I do not think that being present in the media is part of this role. It's important that we are in touch with our community, and I certainly network with my community in many other ways. But your name in the paper is not a reflection of how hard you work around here, and I know there are many others who are working incredibly hard too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'll sort of refer to some sort of scribbled notes here. And I'll begin with the view that I am in absolutely no doubt that each and every one of this council are totally committed to the city and its people. I'm absolutely no doubt about that. And they are acting always in the best interests of their community. And with that, we'll bring different perspectives and different values, different priorities with that. And that's the richness of a large council of 13 of us. And the reason I say that is that in this triennium, we've gone to committees of the whole. And I did have some misgivings, but from my experience in the previous 2 trienniums is that when we had smaller committees and were appointed to a couple of them, those committees lacked the breadth of that experience that I've just mentioned. And I think, reflecting, there would be some decisions of some of those committees that if they were done by a committee of the whole or the council, we would have come to a different conclusion, and one that would have had probably better and broader buy-in. And the reason I'm saying that is now that we're coming to this triennium is that we've probably has perpetuated perhaps an unworkable structure, is that we've gone from 4 standing committees up to 5 plus full council. And the obligation of committees of the whole, you turn up, you participate, you read, you prepare, and you make your contribution. And that does take time. what has become apparent as we've gone through, the COVID and the workload coming up with the long-term plan plus our own priorities is that the structure that we've got now is unworkable. It's putting too much pressure on us as council members, and more importantly, the staff that support us. Something has to change. To keep doing the same thing over and over again, recognising that it's not working and expecting a different result, it's a well-known cliche. So we can talk and workshop, and I appreciate the comments from Councillor Neil Stevens and others that saying that perhaps we'll work through it, but time is of the essence. We've got enough experience around here to say that here are some things that we might like to try. We can change it again. I'd rather we didn't, but so I'll speak in support of it. Is that the bare bones are there. Let's give it a go, and let's get on with some of those priorities that we all agreed on at the beginning of this triennium. I'll just finish on it that restructures, and I think some of us around the room have probably been through a few over the lives and this and previous lives, and I'm looking at members of the gallery is that as well. Restructures and change invariably involve personalities, and I think we need to be very clear is we need to take the personalities, acknowledge it and put it to one side, but deal with the structure and the form to get the job done. So I'll speak in support of the recommendations as up there. I will support them, and I'd encourage others around the council table to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. And the only other speaker I've got left is Councillor Egger, so I'll go to Councillor Egger and then I'll Councillor Brand as well. So Councillor Egger.
Can we do a division?
Councillor Brand. Yes, I think there's a division paper sitting in front of the Chief Executive already, Councillor Sensen. Some of the behaviours, we kind of work those ones out. So Councillor Edgar and Councillor Brand, and then I'll speak as a right of reply for the section. Very briefly.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and I'll also refer to some random notes. Council showed itself for what it's really good at during COVID-19. We delivered business as usual. We were able to be this really stabilising force, and we ensured that people had stormwater, wastewater, drinking water. And while that may not sound sexy or exciting, if you don't have those things, you really notice a gap in your life. And with all due deference to an organisation and a sector that I love dearly, we aren't good at pivoting and changing. We are great at business as usual. But if you want innovation, if you want thinking outside the square, look, we're one of the most legislatively driven industries imaginable. There are hundreds of pieces of legislation that we are beholden to. Even some of the most simple things that people wonder why we can't be responsive to, it's because we have to go through a very long process. And it's also what makes us risk averse, because we have central government upon high telling us, don't do this, you can't do that. And we have the ratepayers also saying, be mindful of this, be mindful of that. And we try and balance all of that in all of our decision making. And unfortunately, it then creates very risk averse, a very business as usual type of environment. And even before COVID-19, our community is saying we want different from local government. We want to see some innovation. We want to see some progress. We want to see an outcomes focus rather than an outputs focus. And that's what I really want to see as well. And look, this isn't Nelson City Council I'm talking about in specific. This is local government across the country. There was recent research in Australia, and they found the exact same thing for their local government. You know, they're very risk averse, they're not good at innovating, it's very bureaucratic, very legislatively driven. And so we have structures that sort of focus us on infrastructure rather than on people. And we need to be more focused on people and what our people need. Look, is this a perfect structure? I don't know if there is one. is there a perfect structure? I mean, if we, you know, the pursuit of perfection generally impedes improvement. So we need to seek improvement, because I think if we only change once we think we've got perfection, then we will never change at all. And so we need to try and do something to deliver better for our community and for the city that I love. So that to me is a key driver today, is that ability to be responsive to the community priorities, the community needs. We know housing is a real key one, but we just know that ability to think outside the square and maybe be more responsive is another key driver. And we need to have less attention to historic operational minutiae and more focus on bringing the ideas. We've got amazing councillors sitting around this table, every single one. There is such a great range of skills and insights and knowledge and ideas and passion. And having those committees of the whole, I was really strongly advocated for, because we need all of those voices around the table. But we also need the voices of the community too, because even with the diversity we have around the table, we know that there are voices and perspectives missing. And so we can never do anything without the community. So look, I'm hoping that this less rigid, historic-based structure will enable us to be more responsive and innovate more. And I just hope that every councillor, look, I know every councillor will continue to give their all, because I know how passionate and dedicated they are. And yeah, I also find, I was at a Zone 5-6 meeting, which is the all of the South Island councils last week. And it was interesting that a number of the councils there are also going through restructures, because they also found that they just need to pivot. And pivot is not something that's often used in council. It's something businesses manage to do. We saw so many businesses pivot quite quickly. Pivot and quickly are not words used often in reference to local government. So change is hard, but our community needs and deserves different. So look, I'm hoping this will do that. And with everyone's goodwill, then it will. Thank you.
Councillor Brand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I've got scattered notes that are going to just keep me on track. When we first came to council, we were given this little piece of paper that was laminated by the governance advisors, and it said, wait, it said, why am I talking? And on there it said, are you adding to the comments that have already been made? Is it beneficial and is it worth it? So here I am listening to what my colleagues have said and really appreciated some of their thoughts that they've shared. And I feel that I do need to add my perspective to that conversation. So here I am. So a year ago, as we came out of our campaign and came and sat at this table, there were 6 new faces. A returning face was one of those, and a different councillor face at the table that brought excitement, engagement, and some real energy that I was excited to be a part of, because I had campaigned on community engagement, communication, future sustainability, accountability, and transparency. And having conversations with the people around this table and what their drive for being on council was, because we have 13 strong personalities who are very passionate about our community and hold it in their heart with the decisions that they make. So I was excited about that, and I thought, great, we are going to achieve something finally for our community that they've been crying out for many years. Now, I'm used to disappointment, because among the faces sitting at this table, I did not get elected the first time to sit here by our community. But here I am through perseverance, sorry, that tongue tied, thank you, Nat, and determination to provide for the community and have those voices that I talked to out there brought to this table. I work out that I'm not a social media person. I am not that person. And thank you, Councillor Fulton, for talking about those that are and those that have different strengths. I'm the person that would rather go out and meet with you, have the conversation, hear what you have to say, and focus on what that needs to happen to come back to council and how we can actually achieve something. So a year ago, we were set on these full council committees, and I thought, okay, but that's more of what we've had. And if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll keep getting what we've always got. So are we actually going to achieve anything? I thought, I'll bide my time and see what happens. But it was great. I really enjoyed it for that first, I don't know, few months, because it helped ground me in the information and the knowledge that you needed to have on all issues to understand the key issues and the priorities for the council, as well as how the council dynamics work. And over time, it was touched on by Councillor McGurk and Councillor Fulton and Councillor Edgar, that by doing that, we've actually been able to identify areas where things are now working in parallel and in unison instead of in silos and disconnected and things not happening together. And I think that is bloody awesome, to be frank, because there's nothing worse than working in a dysfunctional organisation when everyone's trying to get to, there's a saying, all roads lead to Rome. But if you're on a different path and you're not communicating, you're on a different journey and you're going to achieve different things. So you don't have that unison, and while you may think that you're working in the best interest of your community, you may not actually be. So after a few months and hardworking, and I call it rummaging in the third drawer down because I like to research and I like to get my head around issues and understand what's going on, I felt that it was time to change, because we had set key priorities at our strategic day, which was a great day, I have to say. And those strategic visions and priorities that we set were not going to be achieved in this triennium if we stayed on the current councillors of all. And I say that because for me, I was stuck in the ivory tower, as it's been referred to, instead of able to go out and meet and chat and communicate with the different people in our community from North Nelson all the way through to our boundary. So here I am saying, what is this change actually about? Was it about COVID-19? Was it about committees of a whole? Is it about community engagement? Do I think we're doing change for the sake of change? Or are we working and engaging with our community using the best model available? Does the focus on the key issues that we address as council get addressed under our current structure? And for me, I have to say no. I feel that we are spending too much time in the ivory tower instead of out with our community, and therefore we would become disconnected with our community, and we are not doing the best job that we can to ensure that they are getting their needs met and addressed. COVID came along and people are hurting. I've spoken to different people in different sectors and they're hurting, and the wage subsidy is about to stop. A lot of people are deciding whether they can stay, live here, whether they keep their business, lose their job, sell their house. What do they need to actually do? Can they even put food on the table and pay the power bill? So for me, we have to have flexibility and ability to hear and be relevant to our community. The current structure that we're operating under does not enable that. So I thank Councillor Edgar for talking about the pivot in there, because that is what I believe that we need to do. So personality aside, are we focused on the key issues, and can we achieve the key issues that drive us to be here and be passionate about this community? And are we best serving our community by carrying on the way we are? I don't believe we are, and I will support the changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do a brief right of reply. The last four speakers have reflected what I hear, and they've been connecting with their community, and they know we have to do something differently. The structure was good, as Councillor Brand said, as an induction process to start, and that was always my objective, that you would come in and really get to understand all of the parts of council so that you could then start to connect them and work out how we could get this great big ocean liner to move a bit faster and be a bit more responsive to its community. This is a change in structure that would have occurred regardless of COVID. But actually COVID has made it more urgent for us to get on and do it. It's caused me delay in bringing it through to you because it's the only way we can do this is to sit together in a room. As Councillor Fulton said, this is not a meeting to have on Zoom. This is not a process you have on Zoom. You need to sit one-on-one and have those conversations. And that's the process that we've used to come here. This is not a Conservative proposition or proposal. It is anything but that. It is one that is very much bedded in he tangata, in the people of our region, not in a focus on the people just sitting in this room, not about you as individuals. It's actually about you as community members reflecting what is important to our community, to, as Councillor Eka said, is to pivot, to be flexible, to innovate. And that's the structure that's there. It's worth giving it a go. And I really encourage you to support the structure change. Once we've done the structure change, if it goes through, we'll move on to the second part of the resolution. If that part doesn't go through, then we won't do the second part of the resolution. Obviously, there will be no need. So I'm now going to put the motion and a division has been called.
So just as a pre-warning, the names are in genuine random order this time. So
Keep you on your toes.
who says we can't pivot?
Sorry. Look at that.
Councillor Laurie.
No.
Councillor Edgar.
4.
Councillor Rainey.
No.
Councillor Sanson.
No.
Councillor Brand.
4.
Councillor Courtney. Aye. Councillor Skinner.
Aye.
Councillor Bowater.
Aye.
Councillor McGurk.
Aye.
Councillor Noonan.
Aye.
Councillor Fulton.
Aye.
Councillor O'Neill Stevens.
No.
Mayor Rees.
Aye. Thank you. That's great. The motion is carried, 9 votes to 4. Thank you.
And I'm also just going to step away because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm having to vote against other colleagues around the table. I don't want to be pitching people against each other.
Thank you. That's you don't need to leave the room.
I want to go and join the gallery and bear witness.
Councillors, we're now at the second part of the resolutions, which are 13 through to 18. The roles are set out, as we talked about earlier in the meeting. There are more committees to come back, and they'll come back as part of the delegations. The roles are set with both chairs and deputies established for the governing committee. The resolution is a confirmation of the structure for the infrastructure committee, and I didn't see a need to establish 2 deputies there. That committee is also complemented by the regional transport committee, so the transport functions are complemented in that way, and I think that structure is working well with Councillor McGurk as the chair and Councillor Eager as the deputy chair of the regional transport committee. The subcommittees to council, the single purpose committees, they have chairs. The intention is that those committees will have predominantly recommending powers. They will be, as I've set out in the document, so they'll have predominantly recommending powers, but one of the decision-making powers that I'll be bringing back to you as part of the delegations is the ability to appoint a deputy. So if those particular subcommittees wish to, and that'll be in the delegations that come back, if you're happy with that, then they'll be able to do that, but you as council will decide on those delegations. The committees may decide there's no need, they may decide there's a need, so they'll come through, but you will make the decision as to whether that delegating power goes in. The city centre engagement group, as I've said, will be a much smaller group focused on primarily on engagement and supporting work across council. So available not just to the city development team, but if there's other work going on with the engagement manager that involves city centre, then they'll be there to help with that as well. And then the proposal to this amendment to the standing orders is just that is set out. So if there's any, we didn't have any questions on that, I think that's reasonably straightforward. And then we're ceasing the operation of the emergency committee, and you'll remember we came in for a meeting to set that up, and then the legislation was amended so through to respond to COVID, so we can now remove that. So I'm, as I said, happy to move these recommendations through to you. I have confidence in all of the people that I have put forward for these roles. As I said at the start, you're all very talented people, and I'm very fortunate in that regard. I don't see that there is something here around best person. I actually find that quite a difficult concept when I'm looking at the individuals and the talent that come forward on behalf of the community. And as I said, we have an election, and then we need to get out of election mode. And we need to really get out of election mode because we have to come together and work together, and it is a levelling. So yes, I do look at those results, but I also know some other things that influence them. But I absolutely respect the talent that is sitting here. Everybody, no one is sidelined because these are whole of council committees that have gone through, and you'll continue to participate as you have. You've got an amazing staff led by the Chief Executive who are available at any time. Their doors are open. They're available for you to come and ask questions, and they have been over the last week or 2 weeks, and they're there always to respond to you. The one thing that is really important to me, though, is that you treat the staff advice with the respect it deserves. That is your independent advice. That is what that is. And there have been times when I feel that we have started to get into a culture of constantly questioning the staff advice. And I just want to say to those who are coming into these chairs roles, your role is to work very, very closely with the senior leadership team, and you must respect the role that the senior leadership team and the Chief Executive have in bringing independent advice to us. They are bringing the best advice they possibly can. That does not mean you can't challenge it and test it, but you cannot challenge and test the integrity of the people that work for this organisation, because that is not teamwork.
Point of order,
That is
Madam
real
Mayor.
challenge.
Point of order. I don't think anyone sitting at this table has ever challenged the integrity of any of our staff. And for you to suggest that we might have is very insulting and misleading and incorrect. And my point of order is you are misleading.
I will withdraw those comments, Councillor Roy, because I think that's fair. So I do think that is fair. And the wording I'm using here is very much around what I'm expecting as we go forward into this process, is that I look at the councillors that I'm putting into these roles. I'm confident that they will really strengthen that relationship. It is critically important as we go through that it is not a them and us scenario. Now, I have seen that play out in councils before, of the staff coming into this room and it being like an inquisitorial process. And Councillor Laurie, there are occasions when I've asked you to desist from an inquisitorial style in the chamber. And actually that does need to stop, because that is really important to achieving the engagement and the alignment and the freedom of advice. There is nothing worse than staff coming in here and feeling they are faced with an inquisition, because that makes it very, very difficult for the Chief Executive to bring us the innovative, free-thinking advice, and that's what I want to achieve. So to those of you who I'm recommending, if you go through into the chairs roles, that is something I expect you to lead from your committees. That's absolutely the ethics and behaviour that I expect you as chairs to bring to those roles, and I'm confident that you will do that. It is a different style of politics. It is a different style of politics. It is away from transactional, inquisitorial style. It does not belong in politics anymore. It doesn't, and it's something I feel very strongly about, and I've spoken about at the start of this training.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
I'm not going. What is your point of order?
Well, I also believe that by saying inquisitorial, there's no place for that. That you are misleading the room and the community. That there is that inquisitorial. My own personal experience actually is that there is gatekeeping of information, and that information we are asking for is not forthcoming, or it is being filtered before it gets to.
Madam Mayor,
Now,
can
okay, now we've
can
got
I
a
only do
problem.
your point
That
of
is
order?
not a point of order, so but
Yeah.
you've now got, I think, going to have one against you after that. So
It's
it's
fine. I
very
withdraw it and
No,
apologise.
no, I'm sorry, you can't. No, I'm sorry. In that instance, in a public meeting, and this is the problem. So we're going to rule on the first point of order, and I'm not going to uphold that. But I think, do I have a second point of order from Councillor Fulton as signalled?
Well, I would, if people are going to raise point of orders, can they please stick to the standing orders?
Yes.
And
And
let's not use it as an opportunity to interrupt someone who's speaking.
No, and I have to say, Councillor Sanson, that is.
But is it fair to say that this is
No.
an inquisitorial environment? Is that not a point?
Yes,
of
I believe that there are occasions where I've sat in here, and that is very much the experience that the staff feel. We need to get away from that. We're here to get the best advice. But I have to say, Councillor Fulton, Sanson, you do need to withdraw those comments. You've made them publicly, but there is no substance at all. And I find that incredibly disrespectful to the Chief Executive and the senior leadership team, in fact, of every member of staff in this organisation.
So you don't
I'd
you
like you to-
withdraw the
I would like
comments
you to
that there
withdraw
is
those. I find it
filtering and gatekeeping
Yes,
of
I would.
information?
There is absolutely no substance for that.
Sure, I'm happy to withdraw those in this process, and I will follow it up in other avenues if this is not the space to discuss those.
I'm going to take a brief adjournment because I'm really concerned about the comments you're making, and not on behalf of the Chief Executive. I need to speak with the Chief Executive because that is quite an accusation to make. Those comments are not appropriate in a meeting, but they're not appropriate at all. And you'll need to, outside of this meeting, we're going to need to have a discussion about that because I expect you to.
Thanks. I'd appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion. There's a number of
thank you,
examples I'm concerned about.
All right, now, so it's been moved and seconded, and I think we're just going to move straight into, we're going to speak to this, then we're going to move straight into debate. Yes, so we've moved and seconded. So anyone wish to speak to the motion? Councillor, I thought was abstaining from voting.
I might change my mind. So I value all the people whose names are on those screens. But I do have to say for the record that I believe, and many other people also believe, that Councillor Rainey, Councillor Sanson and myself are not being given these roles because we have upset Madam Mayor. And I'll explain why. I think we've been asking questions that people don't want asked. They're questions about forestry, they're questions about climate change, they're questions about what we're doing, if anything, in the central city. They're questions about the influence of interest groups on this council. And I think that's the reason that we're being sidelined. I don't think it's just a coincidence, which I think is what people are being expected to believe. I don't think they do believe that. I don't believe that. And I think this is a shame because I think we actually need a council where people are prepared to ask hard questions, where they're prepared to speak truth to power, and where they should be able to do that without fear of repercussions. And that is not the environment that I feel we're in right now. So I hope that changes, but I don't think the way this has been handled has been very good for Nelson.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Rainey.
Madam Chair, I'm going to abstain from voting on this because I also don't want to be put in a position to be making a decision in regards to my colleagues. I just want to say that some of the comments you made just in your previous discussion or your previous statement about the tone potentially is what you're suggesting of the way we have proceedings in this room, I think signal a worrying move And I mentioned it before earlier when in a statement that I read because I wanted to get my thoughts really clear. It's extremely important for local democracy that we have the ability around this table to express alternative points of view, and that those alternative points of view are celebrated as discussion, not as confrontation. And making a clear differentiation between confrontation and discussion, and discussion or deliberation or alternative viewpoints is, I think, something that's been lacking. Now, one of the things that I really wanted to see happen was some way of expressing a renewed, refreshed, redrawn attempt at achieving collegiality by what you're suggesting today. And I'm quite sure that everybody around this table wants to try and achieve that. But that refresh, that redraw, that new way of thinking, with all due respect, has to come from the top down. And I'm not just pointing this at you, Madam Mayor, I'm pointing from everybody from around the table and in the organisation. It's not a criticism, it's an encouragement for us all to try and achieve things in a better, newer way, if you might say so. But as part of that, in this tiny little town sitting down the bottom of the Pacific, we've got to learn to embrace alternative narratives. And for you to say that we must not question, that I'm urging the chairs of the new committees to work really closely to make sure that you support the senior leadership team and the staff at all times.
So, Rainer, sorry to interrupt, but I didn't say you must not question. So I haven't said
I apologise.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's what I thought the thrust of what you were saying was.
Absolutely not. No.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because indeed I think it's one of our roles as members of this council to question staff, to question each other, to question the community, to question bullying if it comes up in the community, and to say at every step of the way, if we're not sure about what's going on, then we don't accept it or we don't believe it, to make sure that our voices are clearly heard. It's imperative.
Thank you, Councillor Rainey. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Noonan, thank you.
And thank you, Madam Mayor, and I support quite a lot of what Councillor Rainey has said. I believe that it is our role to test. Our role, we are all elected, we are all here, we hopefully can work as a team. That's the plan. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes people take things the wrong way. I think we all need to be actively listening to one another. We don't all have to agree, and it's okay to disagree. But we need to feel that we can raise our voice to the concerns of our community, because quite a lot of us come here and tell you things that we don't particularly believe ourselves, but we're reflecting what we've been told from the community. So please don't think that it's a personal view all the time. Sometimes we have, excuse me, sometimes we have a lens from our own experience, and looking around the room, most of us have had quite experiences in our life that have been very difficult, and that will affect the way that we reflect to the table. But the one thing I think is so important is that the respect is there to be heard. And I don't think that we should have be shut down because of that. And that actually is to everybody. Every person at this table had to fight to get here. We had to put our heads up above the parapet, and it's freaking hard. And you take that risk of not getting in, and it's tough. And actually, Councillor Brand did that, and she came back again. Good on you, because you put your head up twice, and it's hard, and it's probably harder the second time if you've been knocked back before. And Pete's actually had the same thing. Oh, sorry, Councillor Rainey. Have you had a term out? I've had a go at the mayoralty and was unsuccessful and had to come back again and have another go. And it's not hard. So we all sit here having been through that. So have the respect of one another. We may not, but what I find hard is the tone. It's actually sometimes the tone. And I think it's really important that we do test reports. We are absolutely here to do that. But there are ways to do that. There are respectful ways. There are other ways. The staff, we've talked a little bit about staff. The staff are very limited as to how they can respond to us. We can banter to each other. We can, you know, really fight it out, but the staff don't have that right. It's much harder for them. So we need to know that, you know, when they come in, I remember the first time I came to this council table, and it was before I was elected. I was so nervous. I think my paper was probably, I don't even think I could read it. It was so terrifying coming in here. So we need to realise whoever comes, we're all welcome. All these people are welcome, and we need to listen to them. We may not agree, and that's okay too. But let's hear what they have to say. And I always say to people, they say, how do you do it? And I said, look, most of the time it's really interesting. They say, how do you sit through it? It's so boring and dull. And I said, it's not dull and boring when you have to make a decision for your community. It's quite different. It's another elevation. But it's important that we all have our vote. We are all heard. And we respect the views of others without knocking them around. And I've recently been knocked around by social media, and it's actually not very nice. Thank you.
Now we've got 10 minutes, or I'm going to have to adjourn. In fact, let's make it 6 minutes because we're going to switch over for a committee. So we'll see if we can finish. Otherwise, we'll briefly, what we'll do is we probably won't even leave the table. What we will do is we will just stop. It's to follow. Oh, that's even better. Oh, you clever people. I tell you what would I do without EJ and Robin? That's okay. Okay. The chief exec does have another appointment off-site, so he is going to leave us. But thank you, Pat, and I appreciate that. It's 10 minutes, that's all right. So now we was on my list. Thank you very much, EJ. Councillor Fulton, was that Councillor Fulton? Yep. And then Councillor Courtney. Oh, no, and Neil Stevens. Courtney and no, I think that's all done. Councillor Fulton, now I've got know what we're doing again. Councillor Courtney and then Councillor.
I felt like I sort of covered off most of what I wanted to say in that previous debate, but a couple of the other councillors have made some comments which I just wanted to respond to. Some of them were around the fact that councillors have been outspoken on issues around forestry, climate change and CBD. And I guess I feel like I've been outspoken on forestry, climate change and CBD for the past 10 years. So I'm a little taken aback. And I guess sometimes when councillors say they're hard-working and outspoken, just remember the impact that might have on your colleagues when you read that in social media and the impact that has on them, and the Mayor will know that I am so outspoken on climate change that everyone rolls their eyes when I start talking about it. It's like a broken record. I'm very aware it's like a broken record, and the staff in the room sit there and they go, oh, there goes Councillor Fulton again.
You like the song though, it's a good song.
So, and when we talk about alternative narratives, I think I've been portraying an alternative narrative for at least a decade as well. In my 10 years on council, I discovered that one of my ancestors was Mary Muir, and she was a suffragette and she was 30 years ahead of her time. So, you know, I've been talking about climate change for a good 30 years, definitely 30 years ahead of my time in terms of worrying about the impacts of it. And I like to think that right now, a lot of the alternative narratives are becoming mainstream, and that's what we're seeing happening at central government level. We're seeing it happening at local government level. We're seeing it happening at local government level all around the world, globally, even in America, which is wonderful. So local governments in America are way ahead of us in terms of responding to climate change. So I think we are getting there, and I think we are leading the country in terms of local government thinking around climate change. And it's not easy because there's lots of low-hanging fruit. It takes time to figure out what the low-hanging fruit are, and we have to go after them all. And I see staff who have been working really, really hard in the background to address some of that. I share some of the outspoken councillors' frustrations that we're not pivoting and actioning things fast enough, but I think we are trying our damnedest, and we have been doing that for some 6 years, for quite a few years. When it comes to forestry, we looked at retiring forestry blocks at least 6 years ago. So a lot of that work has been started, and I think that if we all remember that asking questions is great, listening to the answers and listening carefully to the answers, to the parts you agree with as well as the parts you disagree with, is one of the biggest tools we can all practice. We all tend to listen to each other looking for the part we don't want to agree with, but let's try and listen to each other and find the parts we do agree with. And again, I see that sometimes, and I'm as guilty of it as others, that sometimes we need to be more respectful of our staff's responses and accept where they're at in that process. I have been frustrated in the past, and I'm learning. Patience has been one of the biggest skills I've learned in my time on council. So I would encourage you all to just think about how you can go about doing things a bit differently. Sometimes actually doing stuff in the background means that you get far greater results than going to the media. So I'll continue to try and deliver in those alternative narratives as much as I can. I think the community knows I'm trying to achieve that, and let's try and share some stories. Perhaps let's try and share some stories more with the media about the positive good news rather than the disquiet.
Councillor Fulton, Councillor Courtney, and then Councillor Neil-Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And hasn't Councillor Fulton spoken well today? Really well. Proud of you. And you know how we talked the other day about me being 30 years ahead of my time in respect of Trafalgar Street? You said the same thing to me, so we might have something in common. Madam Mayor, I'm heartened by a lot that's been said today. Some have cleared the air, and that's good. But what really meant a lot to me is the remarks by Rachel Sanson, Matt Laurie, and Pete Rainey. They said they weren't going to vote against their colleagues when the names came up. And Madam Mayor, that reaffirmed for me the very high regard I have for those three people. It cemented it in, because I could sit here spend a quarter of an hour addressing you on all of their qualities. So many qualities they have. I'm proud to be associated with them. And to think that they said that today meant everything to me. So thank you so much for what you've said and how you intend to act. These are extraordinary times. We can't lose sight of the fact that we're in a pandemic. We are still in a pandemic. We're in a health crisis. We're dealing with that. And it is deteriorating. Holland is in a dreadful state. South America, India, all of these countries, and we're so fortunate. And I don't want to be pessimistic, but I want to tell you that I believe we're on the cusp of an economic crisis as well, and that's frightening. Because already people are losing their jobs, Madam Mayor, aren't they? They're losing their jobs, their income, their businesses, and their lives in some countries. And it's not just one or two. The high point, of course, is the fact that now the strain, I'm told, is weakening, and that perhaps we're not getting the deaths the same, but that's no consolation as far as any of us around this table is concerned. Look, I think we have to pull together now. The only way, and I've got a simple solution for success of this council, is teamwork and hard work. That's been my recipe for success in my life. And I think if we apply teamwork and regather together again, I think we will go through and make some wonderful decisions around this table. So I'm happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Neil-Stevens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to start by saying, as I've said on many occasions, I have a deep respect for all of those sitting around the table, and I've been privileged to work collaboratively with you all on various issues. And on numerous occasions, we've probably, I think with everyone here, we've probably butted heads, and that is healthy and that is okay. And because of that respect, similarly to councillors Laurie, Sanson and Rainey, whilst I can't vote in favour of this, I will also be abstaining because I don't want to vote against any of you. Now, there's been sort of a high-level, broad discussion around politics, and I'm not going to resist chucking my 2 cents in. My experience of politics has been business as usual. We can talk transformational change, but talk is talk, and politics, in my view, is what we do. And I've seen how quickly stepping into a role like this, you can fall into these sort of ruts of thinking, because it does make your progress in organisations much more easier, much more comfortable. But falling into that system doesn't necessarily deliver what we were elected to do for our community. And I just want to say it won't matter who's holding the reins, as well a job as I'm sure they will do. It won't matter who's holding the reins until we start getting together, working together as a team, and until we can drop some of the harmful behaviours that do exclude people from this room. I quite enjoyed Councillor Noonan referring to Pete as Pete, because that's Pete's name. And, why do we uphold these standards that don't do anything to bring people together? They don't do anything to welcome our community in. Actually, they just hold us above them in that ivory tower, as Councillor Brand referenced. Why can't we drop the pretension, the tone? Maybe we can, chuck a bit of paint on the wall, make it a bit more of a welcoming place. Because until we change things, this room and this way of doing politics is always going to be for a small part of our community. And until we challenge the system, the dominant thoughts and the structure that have delivered us here, we will never be able to pivot and change, because we will be stuck along the same track that we've been on for the past 100 years. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner, I think, is next.
Chair, thank you. I'll very brief. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, valued colleagues and public here. I think you've pretty much said everything that can be said, and there's no more than I can really add to that, but it's really a time to reflect. So thank you for it's been a very healthy debate in general. But I will take a moment. The book fair is going great at Founders. For $1, I got The Rough Guide to Climate Change, and for $1, The Carbon Forest. So that will add to my vast collection of history, arts and Nelson heritage books. But I always get in trouble. I have to take some back, apparently.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Always learning. Councillor Bywater is actually going to go next, and then...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How do I top that? Well done, Councillor Skinner. Tim, I don't speak much in this room. It's probably been noticed, and in fact it was actually mentioned to me yesterday by media, and as I said to her then, bless, I don't need to. You guys are very articulate and you do a damn good job on behalf of the community, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank you all for that you do. Councillor Fulton, Kate, what you touched on and what you said about social media and other things, totally agree. So I didn't need to reiterate, but I would like to acknowledge that. Mel, Councillor Courtney, totally acknowledge. You are a wonderful man, and I do acknowledge the people around this room, Rachel, Pete and Matt. Yep, Pete, Matt and I have on occasions, he said, look, you've got Yvonne and Greg, and I agree, and you've got the room. And I totally respect Matt and where he comes from. And I respect everyone in this room. And I want us to all respect tone, and I want us to respect our community. And I had a moment with our Chief Executive, and he's left the room, and I'll still bring him in the room, bless. He and I had a moment, and I said to him, I'm not a politician. He said, yes, Yvonne, you are. I'm not a politician. And Rohan, you and I can disagree on that one, because I'm here for the community. I don't have an agenda, and I want us to work as a team, and I think it's a collaborative effort of a group to achieve a common and most effective goal. This is what we need to do, then I'll accept this is what we need to do. And I don't want to take it personally. I don't want to make a reflection on anyone here. And I want to also take the moment to acknowledge and thank the staff, acknowledge Roger Ball, who I have worked with in community services. I would like to thank and acknowledge all the staff that have made me feel welcome in the year that I've been here. I think an amazing bunch of people, and I think we've all mentioned that this morning, that they are. I think that tone and respect is important, and sometimes in our passion, we perhaps take it a little bit too far, but that's okay, as long as we can appreciate and bring it back and acknowledge that. And I think we need to remember that as well. I've been to a few things over the time I've been here, and I acknowledge it takes courage to do things differently. And if this is what we need to do, then we can do this. And I believe we can all do it. And I really want to support everyone in this room. And I want to enjoy my time here, as I think we all do, because we're all here for the community. So it's a shame that this reflects the way it does, and some people may take it the way they do. I remember Zoe Palmer a long time ago, bless her, she said something, less hooey, more doey. And it's not a reflection on anyone in this room that this is where we are at the moment. It's just about community, and I'd like us to all remember it's about the community, and that's why we're all here. So thank you everyone for coming along today, and I'm sorry if anyone takes it personally, and that really upsets me, and that's possibly why I don't talk much, because I am here for the community. I think it's really important that we all are, and I know you all are here for that reason as well, and for your support of people in this community. So thank you for being here, and here's hoping we can all remember tone and respect and work together and be as efficient as we can for the community. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Councillor Water. Councillor Ika.
Thank you. Just want to look, I really valued all the comments made around the table, but I just wanted to single out, Councillor Rainey, because I just really agreed with all the points you made and just really appreciated those comments you made. So I'm not going to duplicate them, but just really wanted to thank you for those comments you made. Look, being on council is, I think, as we all know, not without its frustrations. It's not without its disagreements. It's not without its wins and losses. And of course, it's never without hard work, passion and commitment. And I'm glad we have all of that. In those robust discussions and debates, hopefully, we end up with some good outcomes for the community. And it's always important when we are having those robust discussions is making sure that we're taking the community with us, because we can't do things alone. If the community isn't with us in those decisions, we actually don't get the real change we want. The community are paying for those services, those facilities, those outcomes. We also know the community has vision for their city, for their region, for their country. And so we need to make sure we're tapping into that. And then the other key thing is we know if you don't take people on the journey with you, that you can then end up with the swing back in the opposite direction. And we see that in other countries. And we certainly don't want a regressive swing back. So look, just thank you to everyone for the comments you've made around the table today. Thank you for the passion and commitment you give and will continue to give.
Thank you, Councillor Ika. I'm going to speak before we take another division. I think we'll have another division. Presume someone's going to call for that. So we might as well get the sheet organised. I don't know what random order it'll be in this time. I have to wait and see. Councillors, inertia is the Achilles heel of local government. I agree with Councillor Neil Stevens. Fundamental change is actually quite hard to achieve in this environment. The structural change we've made this morning is a step on that journey. It is a step on that journey, but there's more in front of us. And a lot of what we're talking about today and what sits behind us is a different way of working. I watched Social Dilemma. Councillor Fulton sent it through to me, and I watched it during lockdown, or whenever it was, so probably a couple of months ago. And most of you know that I would say retreated from social media for a period because I have some fundamental problems with the ethics of social media. I think it's got a fabulous role as well. But having been subjected to some fairly relentless trolling over the years for all sorts of things, and I want to say to you as a woman leader, it's actually pretty tough. And you will be accused of all sorts of things. There's screeds of lists. The clothes you wear get picked on. So all sorts of things. It's quite a minefield. And I think social media's got a huge role to play. But I also know, and have watched over the last few weeks, really good people around this table being vilified. I've watched social media decide who is best and who is not so good. I find that as a culture and ethics and community, that's not about building the kind of community that I want to live in. And this is really a step in terms of what we're doing today, actually to have a public conversation around some of those things. We talk about tone, and you've heard a lot of conversation around tone at this table, the importance of speaking and listening. Some of you have said to me, I just wish people would, instead of doing I want to follow on from what councillor so-and-so said, but, and they always know that with the but, it's basically, I'm going to acknowledge what they said, but, and then cut them down. That's a tactic that we've seen a lot. It's those little things that actually do make a difference to how we work. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us to do that next step change, that next structural change, next change we need to do to actually have a different way of engaging. And I'm just going to really encourage those of you who have been really active on social media, commenting on the proposal today, and difficult because you've had partial information, so you haven't been able to have the background as to what sits behind this and why we're doing it. And a lot of it sits also with responding in my role to working with other community leaders who are all doing recovery plans at the moment. Are all having to pivot and innovate and change. There's a strong alignment between what we're doing today and the iwi recovery plan. And we'll have some more conversations about that over the next coming week to see that we can have strength in our relationship with iwi, strengthen te tiriti o Waitangi. But I want to thank you today for the way you've spoken. I have huge respect for all of you in this room. It is, as Councillor Fulton said, this can be one of the most frustrating places to work, and it does take patience, but it also does require I hope alternative views aren't like alternative facts, because there's one thing I don't want is the mantra of alternative facts that we see in other countries coming into the space. That would be really, that's not where we need to go. But we do need to challenge, and we do need to challenge the status quo. And this is what this was today. This is a challenge to the status quo to say we can do something better. Actually, we can be courageous, and we need to continue with that. I love a robust debate. You know that. I've been, and if you have me at committees, when I sit at the committee, I'm asking, and wanting to have the questions and think about things differently. And I think that's a really healthy thing, but it's the way that we do it in a way that is respectful and actually amplifies and builds the confidence of staff to be bold. That is actually what we've got to work on now for the next 2 years and really work for our community. So I hope that those of you who are going to abstain, I'm going to take the vote twice actually. So I'm going to take the vote for those of you who want to abstain. You'll see the outcome, and then I'm going to invite you to join in and support your colleagues who have come into those roles. So I'll take just as a verbal vote, as a show of actually, if we're working together and the vote's gone through and that is the decision of council, I would really like you to support the decision of council. So
Sorry, Mayor, I'm confused. I think other people might be confused.
I'll talk you through it in a moment. I'll talk you through it in a moment. Council, so we're taking the division. Thank you, Mr. Ball.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand we're voting on recommendations 13 to 18 inclusive.
Yes, we are 13 to 18. So that includes the standing orders change and the emergency committee.
And the order is random. Councillor Fulton.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor McGurk.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Courtney.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Sanson.
I abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Brand.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Laurie.
Abstain.
Abstain. Councillor Edgar.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Skinner.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Bowater.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Noonan.
Aye.
Aye. Councillor Rainey.
I abstain.
Abstain. Councillor O'Neill Stevens.
I abstain.
Abstain. The Mayor.
Aye. The vote is carried, 9 votes in favour and 4 abstentions, and that concludes that vote.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, just a signal that if you are intending to vote on the same thing that you've just put a second time, as you indicated, I'm going to abstain again.
No, I'm going to ask you, now we've put the vote through and that sets up the structure. I just think it would be really good if we could finish the day with a vote of confidence in each other. So I'd ask you to is a vote of confidence, vote in favour, and a vote of confidence of each other in the roles that you're in.
Is that a vote of confidence in councillors or all elected members?
I think we'll desist. I'm trying to do some collegiality, councillors.
I absolutely support all of my colleagues around this table. I think all of us have reiterated that on numerous times. It's the process, and I feel like I'm living in an alternate reality because other people had like a discussion. I had a kind of a restructure meeting, a disciplinary session, and then
we'll finish off now.
I had no workplace support whatsoever. I have been in shock for the last week and a half or 2 weeks since it happened. So I just feel like I'm completely living on a, I feel like I'm on a different council.
Okay. I think we'll close the meeting and I'll come and spend some time to see what we can do to help you. We're going to close the meeting. So we'll stand, we're going to do karakia. So we'll close again with tuia. Oh, sorry, EJ. Oh, sorry. We're nearly there. I don't think that'll go too well as a karakia, but that's okay. Oh no, here we go. Nearly there. Thank you. So closing today, tuia te rong, tuia te raro, tuia te roto, tuia te waho, tuia te here tangata, ka ronga te ho, ka rongo te ao, humi, huye, tai kie. I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much, and thank you very much.